Cathy, how are you doing? It's been a while. Where have you been?
Oh, where have I been? Oh, where have I been? Well, I left the UK, which might explain why it's been quite a while. So it's now
Yes.
5+ years in Spain.
I mean, as we're recording, it's the coldest it's been in the UK since records began. How are you feeling over there?
Warmer.
Yeah,
So I chose the right side of Spain. So I'm not on the northern coast. I'm on the Mediterranean side.
lovely.
So Barcelona's now home, which means I'm back and forth to the UK every now and then, but not that we would have seen each other, which explains why it's been so long.
Yeah, this is fine. This is how life works. I did a similar thing before we first met, where I lived and worked in Norway, but I was back in the UK like at least once a month, typically once every couple of weeks. But then you can't really connect with the people that you often see. So this is just how things happen, and it's great. So we met a while ago when you were back working at Seedcamp. Can you tell us? Well, can you tell me, remind me, and inform the listeners and the watchers what you were doing there before we kind of fast forward to your current life?
Yeah, of course. So at Seedcamp, I mean, we're almost going back a decade now, so it's quite a while ago. That back then at Seedcamp, I was their communications and marketing manager, and this was at a point where Seedcamp, for those that know or those that don't, was very much sort of like a European accelerator. It was almost like an answer to Y Combinator for Europe, but then they went through a change and they became an early stage fund rather than a accelerator program, and that's roughly around about the time that I was working at Seedcamp. Stayed there for a while, loved it. They're an amazing team, still have really good contacts over there, and it's great to see how amazing Seedcamp is doing. And then I went and got my government experience in the UK. So I joined Tech Nation, what was at the time Tech City UK, then became Tech Nation, as their head of comms.
So that was so you say there's a governmental role. Can you tell us how that's, if there's any kind of fundamental differences between the independent or private owned kind of Seedcamp side of things versus the government?
Yeah, so I'll say it in a really crude way. It'll explain why I left quite promptly, but measuring stuff that doesn't matter would be my answer. So no, Tech Nation, it ran a load of really good programs. Obviously, it's still going in a new form today within the UK. My role as head of comms was very much to champion the UK tech startup scene. Unfortunately for me, the week I joined was also the week that we voted to leave the European Union.
Yeah.
So my role completely changed within the first week on the job. It went from woo K-Tech to, oh my God, everything is on fire. What's going on? What does this mean? And I had to deal with phone calls from journalists from all over the world that just wanted a comment on, what does this mean for the UK tech scene?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it was a tricky one. I'm super pro Europe. I love Europe. I love.
Well, you wouldn't be in Spain now if you weren't pro Europe, sure.
Exactly. Well, there's enough Brits that are in Spain without necessarily being pro Europe, but further down the coast in some lovely homes. For me, I think there's so many positives to being part of something larger than ourselves. So I really struggled in that role because the question I was being asked was basically, what's the upside?
Is there an upside?
I think the latest data is no.
Yeah.
There's still not an upside. But we're not going to make this a chat about Brexit. So I after about 6 months, I decided to accelerate what my ambition was anyway, and the ambition was to start my own firm. So I just decided, screw it, I'm going to make it happen now, and that was back in December 2016.
You say that almost like it's a passing statement. I just decided to, but that's a fairly big decision, right? It's not just something you can think, yeah, I'll do it now.
Yeah. No, so my plan was, I'd for years, I wanted to start my own communications agency. So my background prior to Seedcamp and prior to Tech Nation was I'd worked in the agency world, specialized in working with scale-ups and VCs. I've been very lucky, fortunate even to work with some of like the major brands that were growing around London's Silicon Roundabout. And I mean, now we're going back like 12, 13, 14 years.
Yeah, no one calls that anymore, do they?
Yeah, exactly. So back in the day, that was launching TransferWise, now Wise. It was working with Index Ventures, Songkick, Cedars, a lot of the names that we now know but back in the day when they were much smaller.
Much sure.
Much smaller. And I'd got inspired by working alongside entrepreneurs and being a part of that ecosystem. I thought, you know what, I want to start my own thing. For me, my own thing was an agency that works with these businesses versus can I come up with a game-changing startup that's going to make a VC really rich. So the seed was always in my brain. And Technation and my experience there, unfortunately, was a bit of a kick up the bum to just make it happen. And so, yeah, I did. And it's,
I guess I guess like an unexpected but ultimately welcome catalyst.
Yes,
in that respect,
absolutely.
If you could have been stuck in another job where it's just kind of things going okay, but with Technation, it made, I guess it accelerated your viewpoint and solidified kind of like the next steps and made you think, let's just get on with it now.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I kind of moved to Seedcamp initially from an agency with the, thinking in the brain of I need to go and I need to expand my own network and I need to get some experience on the in-house side and find a different way into venture and working with companies in a different form. And then Technation was another iteration of that. It was kind of a continual, let's get more contacts, let's build out the network, more experience, some good brand names on my CV as well, which, looks great when I'm potentially talking to prospective clients. Yeah. And I think my brain at one point probably was going, okay, we probably need more experience. We probably need to go get another job and add another thing to the CV. But when does that end? And yeah, you're right. The Technation experience was a catalyst to just go, you know what? Let's try it now and let's just go for it.
And that is CEW Communications.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm going to ask about everything about CEW in a short minute, but I'd love to know, one of the things that's kind of amorphous to me is that kind of comm side and the branding side and the PR side. And I think that's somewhere that when it's worked for me and when I work with companies I work with, it has been a magnificent kind of skyrocket catalyst to getting at least early attraction, early acquisition. But often startups don't look at that so much. Can you explain how important you feel the comm side of things is, and how much of a bonus it can be if you get it right, and what it takes to get it right? I know that's a lot of questions in one, so take your time.
Yeah, of course. At its most basic point, communications more broadly, so not just the PR side or whatever the specific channels might be. Bluntly, the ability to simplify what you do and get that across to who you want to get it across to is incredibly important. And it's a valuable skill for anyone to develop. And I say develop because there are people that are obviously natural born communicators, and they're very at ease with taking something quite complicated and simplifying it and getting it out there in the right way. But for a lot of the kind of founders that we typically work with, and I'm sure like a lot of founders that you will know as well, if they've come from more of a technical standpoint or even a scientific standpoint, then they're so smart. What they've created is incredible, but it's being spoken about at such a high level that you're missing out on the opportunity of how you get this in front of ultimately who you want to be selling to.
And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? Because the amount of times I've worked with people or seen websites and I'm looking at it thinking, but what does it do? What is this? But what is going on? But why should I give you money? And you know that there's something there, but also it's just beyond reach because the way it's portrayed, the way it's explained, the way it's shared with you just doesn't resonate.
Yeah, exactly. And how you want to share it and who you want it to resonate with is going to change all the time, right? So there's how do I communicate to my early adopter? How do I communicate to an investor? How do I communicate to the talent that I want to hire to come on this journey with me? And then as you grow and you scale and the pool of potential customers or partners or whatever it might be that you want to get in front of grows, you've now also got to be able to communicate to a very different, varied mixture of people. So communications for me, obviously I work in the field. I would definitely say it's incredibly important. The question mark is with communications, where do you start? And for your company, which part of the marketing mix do you focus on? What
Sure.
makes the most sense?
When a company's starting out, is it as simple as you should start with trying to get those leads in, trying to get your ICP on board, or is it more complicated than that?
Honestly, it depends on the business.
Sure.
And what they're doing, right? So, we've worked with a bunch of pre-seed companies where maybe, they've raised a significant amount at pre-seed, which is normally their kind of, it's their reason that they want to do something more publicly on a media side of things. And often the objective of doing that is we need to hire talent. So we're trying to get our message out there so that we can build some credibility, so that when we're going through the hiring process and people are searching us online, they can see, one, we've got money, so we can pay you and we can keep you employed for a period of time.
Yeah, important.
And there's some trust, right? And it's also a good way of kind of building up some hype. But that same pre-seed company, depending on what they're doing, they may not have a product ready. So are we going to be communicating anything about the product? And if so, are we communicating anything to their target customer? So the objectives for any business can be widely different.
Sure.
It's just, it's ultimately for the company in question. It's, what is my biggest goal right now? Followed by, could communication, could marketing support that?
And how do you help them to determine what that I assume it's part of the job, or part of the kind of discovery when you start working with someone, is to work out what their main comms challenges, what their main part of the marketing mix is, what the main part of what the next step should be as a business? And how do you work with companies to help determine that? Because that's really where a lot of the success is going to come from.
Yeah, so we're very bullish on just asking very open, honest questions about the business.
Sure.
So, if we're having an initial conversation with someone, I don't really want to ask the question, what is your PR objective or your communications objective? I'd rather just be like, what's the focus for your company in the next 6 months? And then we can look at where PR or marketing naturally lends itself to that company. And also because I've worked in this ecosystem for, call it 15 years now, you sort of know at different points for a company on their journey what their kind of main stressors are. And, for a pre-seed company or even a seed company, depending on where they are with their product and product market fit and knowing who their customers are, you shouldn't be wasting money on marketing. We kind of attack it from the angle of, we would much rather you do really well with the little that you have and then go away and focus on growth. And then when you've established exactly what the product is, how you talk about the product, who the product is for, after you've gone through all of that iteration phase, once you've got that nailed, then push really hard on comms and push really hard on marketing. But you still need little bits of it along the way, because it's going to help you in so many different objectives and other things that you need, like investment and hiring.
And when we're looking at the comm side of things, how much of it is understanding how to, or you're teaching or you're working with them to work out how to identify their ideal customer profile and identify the terminology, phrases, language that they're looking for, and identify where they're hanging out. So we, it can be as precise, it can be as sniper rifle accurate as you can be.
Yeah. So, we take a lot of their lead to begin with. So even at the pre-seed and seed stage, they've got an idea of who it is that they're targeting. It's really helpful, obviously, if the founder or someone within the founding team has experience within that field, because their brain is so valuable. For us, once they've given us an idea on who they think their audience is, then on the media front, it's a little bit of additional research just to make sure that the titles that we're going after are read by that sort of individual. And it's also just a bit of inbuilt knowledge across the team of which social media channels, for instance, have the biggest impact when it comes to the audience that they're trying to reach. Broadly speaking, we service mainly B2B companies. So dependent on the age bracket of the individual within a business that they're trying to get in front of, LinkedIn is the main channel for the vast majority of what they're going to do, in addition to media and in addition to doing any other additional content marketing they may have. So, we can work very closely with businesses on establishing what that looks like. But the other thing with the kind of pre-seed and seed stage is that you don't want to go super narrow, super early.
Super early, yeah.
Because you want to be able to also see what else comes through through the work that you're doing. So it might open up a whole other area of customers that you just hadn't even considered.
It's a very difficult tightrope walk.
Yeah.
Because the more you specify niche down onto your ICP, the easier, quote unquote, it is to communicate with them and resonate with them. But also, there's that FOMO of, am I missing out? Is this the actual ICP? Am I missing out on a whole different bunch of people over there who I hadn't considered, who definitely could use my products or service, but I just need to iterate on it some way.
Yeah, it is a tightrope walk.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's like with everything with building a company, and especially at that super early stage, everything is new, everything is test and learn. And so you have to have that mentality going into working on comms and marketing to begin with, because it changes all of the time, right? You know, the language that we use as human beings is always evolving. There's different tones to take. There's different things that crop up trend-wise, news-wise, that you can be reactionary to. And the more you talk to your customer, the more you learn how to speak like your customer as well. So it's not a go work with an agency and they're going to fix everything for you straight off the bat. It's very much, for us, we position it as, this is a partnership.
Yeah.
So we're an extension of your team. Together, we're going to figure this out. And then once we've got that gold, then you push really hard.
And I think I want to double down on the speak with your customer.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a place where I've seen quite a few companies, I don't want to say fail, but they've neglected to do that. And when we've kind of implemented let's have a brief chat with your ideal customer, your current customers, just like you say, the gold is often just there, just a little scrape beneath the surface.
Yeah,
beneath the surface.
Yeah, I mean, it's the simplest thing, right? Like, go record the interview with 20 customers, could be more, and just pulling a number out of the air here, but literally talk to them and record how they talk. And if you're noticing across those 20 different conversations that the same words keep popping up, then incorporate those words into the work that you're doing. There's also the magic of when you talk to your customers and you learn the language, you're not just learning the language, you're also learning the questions that you need to ask them when you're getting into the sales discussion as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the term language market fit?
Yes. It's a lovely term.
It is, yeah. I mean, obviously kind of dovetails nicely with the product market fit side of things. But when I first heard about it, it made, that was a big aha moment for me. It was like, of course, there's many ways to talk about the same thing, but if your potential customers or your customers are using different words, no matter how much you talk about the same thing, it can just create a dissonance. And if you're speaking with 20 people and 15 of them are saying the same words and the same phrases, then it's like, hey, right, write that down, make sure that's on your website, make sure that's on your copy, make sure that's on any sales piece that you're sharing with people, because that's a winner.
Yeah, exactly. LMF. Everyone should champion LMF. I like it.
Absolutely. When we met before, back in the before days, you were I can't remember if you founded or you're part of the Geek Girl Meetup. Is that still
yeah.
Is that still a thing?
So no, it's not still a thing, at least within the UK. Right. So Geek Girl Meetup is an amazing group that was set up, again, like 10 plus years ago, originally in Sweden, and then it was brought over to London, and it was basically a networking group, but a platform for amazing women across STEM to just share their expertise with other women. And I've never felt more empowered than when I've been in one of those rooms with, 50 fucking awesome women just bossing it, and girl crushes are flying around aplenty, and it's just amazing. Sadly, it kind of petered out during the pandemic, like a lot of things did, just because there wasn't the getting together in person side of things. However, I will say that myself and one of the other OG Geek Girls have been talking recently, and there's very much a willingness to bring it back, because I think there's a space for it again. And I think personally, like, given everything that's happening in the world, and particularly things that are happening in the world, having safe spaces like this where again, just badass people get together and share their amazing knowledge and everything. It's needed, and I think we're very keen to explore bringing it back this year if we can.
Look, I really hope it happens. And I've worked a lot with female-led founders, female-led companies, and have enjoyed so much benefit from doing so. And I think everyone will do, and just want to platform everyone really.
Yeah.
And so that's the main thing. And when I found you a part of that, I was just like, yeah, come on, I want to see more of this. I want to see more of this stuff happening.
The one thing that we did, which I adored, was the annual conference.
The what conference? Sorry,
we had an annual conference for Geek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we do regular meetups, smaller versions around a particular topic, and then the conference was a few hundred women, full day event, lots of different talks, keynotes, workshops, etc. And I would feel so drained like a few days later, because you put so much energy into bringing these conferences to life and getting everyone there, and the magic of the day was just amazing. Yeah, and I think that's the part that I'd love to see us bring back in some form. So it might be a watch this space.
I 100% want to be kept informed as to the movements with the Geek Girl Meetup.
Yeah, I need to get a few more of the OG Geek Girls or some new Geek Girls on board, and we'll see what we can make happen maybe later this year.
I want to go now to CEW Communications. So how did you go about doing it? You said you'd felt that you needed to spend more time in the trenches, gathering your list of clients, gathering a list of, expanding your expertise and experience. And I know we talked about just now about the Technation experience kind of made you think, oh, I'm readier now than I thought I would be, or let's just get on with it now. But how did you make that first step? Who did you reach out to first? How did you get over that kind of cold start problem of getting the first clients in?
So you know what? I'll be very honest. The Technation experience, it got a little bit dodgy on my contract/HR experience.
Right.
And sometimes you're in a position where you just have a feeling that the organization's not playing fair with you and your job is at risk. So I, kind of weighed it up in my head and kind of thinking either I still have a job and it's fine, or I'm at risk of losing my job and that's not fine, or I can make the decision. And so while I was in this period, I made the decision that before either of those two things happen, I'm just going to start trying to find clients. So I started within the final few weeks of what would end up being my time at Technation. I found 2 clients, which was enough just to get going.
And validation, yeah.
I created a very basic website, did the company's house registration, got all of that bit sorted. And then it was my choice to leave Technation. So I gave my notice in and explained I've decided I do want to go start my own thing. Technation ended up being one of my first clients for the first month.
Oh, amazing.
Because unfortunately, because of the whole situation, which I won't fully explain, but because of what was going on, my notice period ended up only being a week. So whatever was happening there, which, I'll never know the full truth, but I have my suspicions, they kind of screwed themselves in the foot. So I was able to take them on for the first month, basically to be paid for what I would have been doing if I was in-house.
Fair enough.
And then, just, once I'd officially made the move, you announce it to the world. And one of the big, I guess, sort of aha moments then was I finally realized and recognized the value of the network that I'd built up. I think I had undersold at the time internally to myself, a bit of imposter syndrome creeping in. I'd kind of thought, well, maybe it's not that great, but it was fab. So started in December. Not the greatest month, by the way, to start a company.
To start a new company now.
Yeah. But, I got going December 1st, everything was sorted. I had work before Christmas. Fine. Christmas was a bit quiet. Start of January was a bit quiet, but then it meant the whole of 2017, I was just growing.
Perfect.
And that was it. I mean, there's moments where I look back and I'm like, God, that was brave. But it's paid off. So.
Well, I mean, that imposter syndrome thing it's such a weirdly beautiful thing. and it's a restrictive thing, and it stops so many people making so many interesting steps in their life. Like, for example, I've started posting more on LinkedIn, and when I've had people reach out to me saying, I'd love to do what you're doing, but I just feel like I've got nothing to say. And I'm like, well, have a go and start doing it and get it on with it, through to like yourself, like starting a new company and not feeling that your network, you always felt that you needed to get that network to be a place where you thought it needed to be. But also, ultimately, you like, when you found out, when push came to shove, it was already perhaps more bulging than you thought it needed to be. I don't know. I just find imposter syndrome kind of fascinating. And in addition to that, if someone doesn't have imposter syndrome, I don't think I'd get on with them in any way, shape, or form. It's do you know what I mean? If someone just thinks like I am God's gift, I'm ready now, I'm the goat. If they're thinking that, then I'm probably not going to get on with them. I guess so. I feel it's great to have some imposter syndrome to maybe center you a bit. Yeah. But also, you need to be aware of that it may be restricting in ways that are false.
Yeah, I still have it. It's not disappeared. Yeah. I still have it now. That potentially like an amazing new client comes along. There's an incredible brief, and even though I've got this awesome team, there'll still be part of my brain that goes, "Oh, I don't think they can do that," or "Oh, I don't think that they're going to give it to us." And it's really challenging sometimes. And it's hard because if the voice on the imposter syndrome side gets too loud, then the other part of your brain that goes, just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't necessarily get a shoe in. So it's something I'm always working on, and I still find it challenging. And what I would say, and I guess you can also call this a bit of an aha moment, is actually often in the moments where my imposter syndrome has been if I do push through, probably 100% of the time prove myself wrong.
This is it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It might be a different outcome, but hey, why not have a go?
Yeah, exactly.
So let me talk. Can you talk briefly about your team before we go to the 3 aha moment questions I have for you specifically? Mm-hmm. At what point did you realize I need other people surround me to support the growth? And what was it like making that kind of first hire?
Yeah, I mean, there's been 2 versions of this, in all honesty, because the company kind of collapsed at the beginning of the pandemic. Right. So I've got CEW pre-pandemic and CEW post-pandemic, and they're both very different experiences. So I was able to take the lessons from the first time around, the second time around. Now, first time around. So the first time around with CEW, I set a personal goal, which was in my first year of business, I wanted to do 6 figures in revenue. Mm-hmm. And if I hit 6 figures in revenue, I would buy myself a pair of Christian Vuitton shoes, right? Just like little milestones. I'm like, I want the red sole, like beautiful high heels. That's my treat for myself. But the other thing that I recognized was, in order to hit that figure in revenue, at some point, I needed a second. And so I started kind of small. So that the first hire I ever made was a paid intern. Highly believe in paid internships, just as an aside. Yeah. And this was actually through, I think it was City of London. So they have a program where you have a placement student for a year. So it's a 4-year course, but one is out in industry. So I hired Toto, who's great. She did a year with me, and she was the first hire. So now the challenge with this, looking back, was that I had a first hire who I was training, which takes a lot of time, which I learned the hard way. But at the time, financially and with where we were going as a business, it kind of made the most sense. Within a few months after hiring her, I then looked at bringing on someone more senior. So I hired an account manager. So within about 18 months, we went from being just Cathy to being a team of 4 with some additional kind of freelance support based on projects that were coming in. Now, the first iteration of the company, we never really got bigger than 6 people. The personal challenges I had the first time around, I had 1 year where within a couple of months of each other, less than that, I lost both of my grandparents, and I was very, very, very close to both of my grandparents. And so this was also the recognition of my mental health, my mental state, and the business are directly connected. Yeah. If I can't perform, I can't drive growth. So a lesson here from first time around was I should have had someone on my team like myself who could drive growth, who could pick up on this when I couldn't.
Sure.
I didn't have those people at the time. So the business was limited. We had work, but I couldn't generate too much new work on top of that just because of where I was at the time. So I just, bad depression and all of that. And so,
I mean, that's a fair lesson to learn. I'm sure you're not the only person who's done that. And we're seeing more with, there's a kind of trend in, at least calling it founder-led growth, but then there's that, you've got to recognize there's the potential ceiling there as well if it is all on one person's shoulders, I guess. Yeah.
And, this is going back to the beginning of the company. So the company now is 8 years old. So this is in year 1, year 2. If I was to start the business now, I would be looking at, virtual assistants, agents that can automate certain processes. Where can I utilize AI within the business development side of the company as well? It would just save so much time. The first time around 8 years ago, I didn't know enough about that space, and also it's still so nascent that you wouldn't necessarily put the risk on those tools. So the lessons learned along the way. And then, we had like a typical agency. We had ebbs and flows in terms of a good year, good month, bad year, etc. And then the pandemic hit. And one of the big lessons for me as the pandemic hit was we had too many clients in one sector.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that sector was property and prop tech.
Sure.
So, in addition to that and the few other clients that we had in different fields, when the pandemic hit and everyone went into panic, we lost 90% of our clients over a 2-week period. Yeah. So unfortunately, that meant I had to, embrace what we were very lucky to have in the UK, which was the furlough scheme. And then unfortunately, over time, just had to make redundancies. And the agency went from being 5 or 4 people at the beginning of the pandemic to just being me again.
I think it's an interesting challenge because when you're talking about agencies, often the best way to get growth is to niche down and have your sector that works for you. So obviously when you were going down the prop tech route, that made sense because okay, there's one prop tech company, I can work with others, and the growth would make it easy to scale. But then there is that vulnerability, which unfortunately unprecedented really is something that's happened. So how do you set up the company now? Is it still all prop tech or
no? Actually, at the moment we've got nothing in prop tech. We did so much of it at that point. Because we're working with broadly tech B2B scale ups. We very much can just meet the market where the market's at. So which parts of technology right now are raising the most venture capital? So a lot of what we are working on right now, it's deep tech, it's quantum computing, venture, health tech, fintech is still very regular for us in terms of the types of client that we have. We've got one business that we work with that technically you could say is prop tech, but they're also robotics, they're architecture, really freaking cool. I love them.
I've no idea. I can't even imagine what kind of company that is.
Imagine a giant robotic arm that can build sustainable housing.
Love it. So then there's sustainability in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Which again, very, very, I hate using this pun, but hot right now. Yeah. So we've shifted, and when I started building the company up again, I focused on contractors first, not employees.
Sure.
Yeah. So I brought on trusted contractors that I worked with many times over. Actually, one of them was one of my former team members who I have a lot of trust in, and she's phenomenal. And so we started with, I was doing a lot of client work, but then I was bringing them on to support. And so the agency scaled and got to a good point before I even made another full-time hire.
Nice.
And then, so now the model looks like this. We're 16 people.
Amazing. How's that feel?
I'm so bad at this. This is the other thing I'm really shit at, which is the woo! Yay! It's the terrible bit of being a founder where you're like, great, that's sorted, next. And then you don't take a moment to recognize what's going on, which is something I need to work on this year.
Well, let's take a brief pause to recognize.
Okay. Good job, Cathy. So we now have a core team based in London. So we're 6 at the core. And then the additional number are made up from contractors, and they're based all over. So we're now not just focused on businesses that are in the UK. We're very much a European communications agency, and PR is not the only thing we do. So we've also expanded services. So we do PR, but we also we have an amazing writer studio, so we can provide phenomenal journalists that have written for Sifted or the FT or the Next Web or the Economist as ghostwriters for a variety of different types of projects. We also provide media training, speakers training, social media support specifically for LinkedIn, event support, and we've got multimedia as a service as well, so the team can provide photography, videography, and audio.
Love it. I might tap you up for some help with some clients in the future.
Yes, please.
So this podcast is called Aha Moments Podcast, and there's three core questions. The first question is, can you think of an aha moment you've had with a company you've worked with or for, and how did you find that aha moment in the first place? And once you found it, how did you engineer everything to make sure that your potential clients got there as quickly as possible?
Oh, this is actually the tricky one, so give me a second. Yeah, okay, I got one. So back when I was at Seedcamp, one of the biggest things I learnt from that team would be from Carlos, who's one of the managing partners of Seedcamp. And Carlos was super bullish at the time. He still is really bullish on content. And coming into that role, I was doing communications and marketing. I'd had PR agency experience for quite some time. I'd done some stuff on social, but creation of content like podcasts, etc., was all very new to me. And Carlos has been a prolific podcaster now for a very long time, and he's very, very good at it. And he had a podcast back then that was still fairly new. And one of my original jobs was edit this podcast. Like, hello, never seen editing software before, never edited a podcast before, blah, blah, blah. So I got given this responsibility of editing. And I actually am really super grateful to Carlos for that, because it was a real first experience for me of having to dive deep into a tool and teach myself how to do this. I was absolutely terrified, by the way, that I was going to fuck it up. But through doing that, and, Camp invests in these businesses so early on, and they're very good at then looking at, with whatever that business might be, utilizing it themselves if it's relevant. You become naturally an early adopter. And it forced me into something that I hadn't necessarily been doing before. And through Carlos and him giving me this responsibility, I started doing a podcast.
So the aha moment is podcasts.
Podcasts, yeah. We say this within CEW all the time. Like, a lot of people like to say, like, there's too many podcasts, or podcasting is dead, yada, 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 yada. It's not. There's still a huge place for podcasts. So I'd say Carlos and his big love of creating content and self-marketing in a way through it all. It's a big aha moment for me. I'm very grateful to him for that as well.
Well, I mean, you were a big part of my success, because you came on my first ever podcast, the Kobi Digital podcast, way back in the day, and that podcast has single-handedly been the reason I still, have a career in this industry. And so when people talk, when people talk about should I have a podcast, I mean, I got so few listeners generally, but it still has been the main catalyst to my career going forward. And I recommend starting a podcast for everyone for so many different reasons, which we can go into another time and have a discussion about it. But look, I love the fact your aha moment was, let's get a podcast. Well, first of all, you learn how to make a podcast, then you start your own one, and then advocate for it for your other clients as well. So
one of the things that I think not enough people realize is like with everything, right? If we go back to the whole thing we were talking about with imposter syndrome, it's like, if you can get going, move forward with it, and you're consistent, success will come. But success doesn't need to look like I've got 10,000 subscribers, I have a million downloads, I have all of this stuff. Success, depending on who it is you're trying to get in front of, it comes from the connections I build with the guests that I have on my podcast.
100%.
What that leads to as well. I learned so much from interviewing on my podcast. Not only did I learn from the guests, which was great, but actually a lot of the skill set of being able to interview.
It's all important things, yeah.
All important things. So for me, there's a lot of plus points to doing it. Yes, it takes time, but there's a beautiful way to do it and manage it without it being everything.
I mean, one thing for me is that it's, first of all, it's fun. And I'd say it takes time, but I'd much rather have this conversation with you now and then go and edit this podcast. And that's going to take way longer than if I wrote a blog post about, comms marketing for B2B startups. And so I have so much more energy, even though I know it's going to take more time to do it. But then it also for me, I call it the content catalyst. So it's then this podcast episode will go out, and then I'll write about it later on. Maybe it'll be a newsletter, maybe it'll be some social media posts. But this one beautiful discussion we're having now becomes a multitude of other potential content sources, which then bring in other people in. And I can't think of any of the parallels that work in that kind of same way. And when people ask about that kind of ROI podcast, but it takes a bit of time. Yeah, it costs a bit of money, but also you potentially filling your content calendar from this one episode or these small episodes. And I'm preaching to the converted here, preaching to the choir here, but I love it. Okay, aha moment question number 2. I don't know why I'm announcing like this. So can you think of an aha moment in a product or service that you've bought into, that one of your favorite products? Maybe it's the Vuitton shoes. First of all, did you get the Vuitton shoes?
I did more than 6 figures in my first year. I went to
Amazing.
I think I took myself to Selfridges with my sister, and I was like, yes, I'm gonna buy them. And now the the Louis Vuittons haven't been worn in many years, and I'm mainly looking at like what trainers can I easily slip into that don't involve me lacing them up right now because I'm pregnant and I can't bend down. But
Cathy, I'm gonna share my top tip here. It's Crocs.
No, I'm sorry. I am never ever getting on board with Team Croc. Cannot.
You say that.
I can't. No, it's never happening. When I was 14, my first ever job was in a shoe shop.
Right.
And I remember Crocs being on sale, and I remember the women that I worked with in this shoe shop as a Saturday girl, they would go on and on and on about how bad for your feet Crocs were.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
Sorry, just ruining that for you. I can't.
Crocs right now.
They're in my brain. They're branded as bad. Like I can't do them. Can't do them.
Okay, so not Crocs then.
I appreciate the slipping on part.
Yeah.
But I could also just get slippers.
Mojabe's. They're quite good.
Oh yeah. And actually, I quite like a pair of Birkenstocks, which again, they're not sexy, but they're really comfortable.
Yeah. So, it's just comfort nowadays.
Yeah, that's actually my life right now. Is what can I do to make myself comfortable?
So aha moment for yourself for a product or service that you bought into.
I now do try lots of different services all of the time. Kind of going back to the earlier point with Carlos and the learning how to edit podcasts and everything. The one service I'm putting a lot more time into right now, I suck at design. Like I'm really not good at as a designer. I am a words person. I am a talking person. I love video, but when it comes to graphics, I am awful. And so I'm trying at the moment to get better with Canva, which slowly she'll learn maybe how to make things look okay or not worry about them as much. But aside from maybe something like Canva, which I can learn through and cheat a little bit in terms of the design, I'm still a bit old school. I still think, a big aha moment for me is that I can't beat pen and paper.
I mean, that's great. I mean, first of all, Canva is groundbreaking to me. I know how to use Photoshop poorly. I know how to use Illustrator poorly. I know how to use all the other kind of things poorly. And Canva just makes things easier for people who just want to center an icon or center an element in Photoshop or Illustrator in a page. It takes so much skill. Whereas Canva just kind of slide it over, locks into place vertically, horizontally, and Bob's your uncle.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, well, this is why they're a $1 billion company, because they're just making stuff that shouldn't be difficult, not difficult. So Canva, I've had so many aha moments with Canva. Just the background remover that they have there.
Oh yeah.
Put a thing on there, click a button, that used to take hours for me on Photoshop to remove the background. Now it's done in like a few seconds, and it's just, again, aha moments all day long with Canva. So I applaud that.
Yeah. So Canva, big one. And then I think, I'm regularly looking at how I can better organize myself, or I'm big on the whole professional and personal development stuff. And at the end of the day, I just give me a pen and paper.
Sure.
Yeah. You can give me all of the whizzy tech tools and everything, but my brain will just power through with scribbles and.
You've got to 100% do what makes sense for yourself.
Yeah,
I'm kind of a hybrid in that I use the Apple Pen with GoodNotes, and that's my favorite way to do things. And I do love a Moleskine and a pen, but I got to the stage where I'd have so many ideas in like 50 different Moleskines, I could never find it when I needed to. But the GoodNotes thing, or the iPad thing, means I can search for a word and it'll bring me back to that note. So that's the main thing I love. I still prefer writing pen and paper, but it's the pulling back that information that was in my head at a later date. That's the iPad bit.
Yeah, okay. I may have to take a leaf out of your book then. And there you go, bring in a pun. And try that as well. I've literally just on my desk here, I've just got like a collection of colourful Moleskine books.
I couldn't walk past the Moleskine shop for like a decade without going in there and I had like Star Wars ones. I had like all these different ones. And I'd happily spend the money and I'd get fancy pens. But I can completely understand where you're coming from. So finally, personal life hack or aha moment that you want to share with anyone, if you want to, of course.
Well, you know what? I'll share this one because I actually wrote about it on LinkedIn this morning, and therefore it's really fresh in my mind.
Right.
Meal prepping, honestly. Yeah. And the reason I wrote about it on LinkedIn more explicitly, it's the decision fatigue. And at the moment I am about, call it 7.5 months pregnant, maybe a little bit more. I've got all of the lovely, joyful, weird pregnancy symptoms that happen all of the time. So you add all of that physical stuff on top of the mental stuff that's going on every day. My brain in the evening is just completely and utterly fried. And for the last couple of years, we don't necessarily do it every single week, but we're getting better and better and better at it. My husband and I do every Saturday morning, sit down, what are we eating for the week? What's the shopping list? And then done all of those decisions in one go. It just avoids this really painful conversation at night where one of you turns to the other and goes, what are we doing for dinner tonight? And then you look at them and it's just despair. It's just like, why do I have to think about this?
Despair is the best word for it.
Yeah, and it does seriously make a difference. So we make all of the decisions in one go. So now it's, what are you doing for dinner tonight? Have you consulted the note on the fridge?
Honestly, and I've started using ChatGPT for this. I'm not a big fan of using ChatGPT for writing, but there's things like, hey, these are the things we like buying. What different meals can we make from it? And that's really helpful. That's really helpful to make things slightly different, but also I can make them quickly enough. And it's the same kind of things I buy week in, week out.
Yeah.
So that for me is a great place where ChatGPT does like really work. So if you've not tried that,
so my husband has done this. So because I'm not traveling at the moment, but I do regularly travel, and I'm the cook. So unless there's something in the freezer, something's been pre-made, when I'm away, he is most likely at one evening going to have a pizza, and then another night he might actually cook. And one skill I have is I can open up the fridge and I can just see what's in the fridge and I can go, great, I've got a meal, done.
This is it, yeah.
I can think about that. But for him, that doesn't exist. So he uses it kind of similarly and a little bit in the reverse of, I have the following ingredients left in my fridge. What meal can I create using these? And then ChatGPT goes, hey, you could make this. And then he's like, great, tell me how to make that, please. And it works. And I think it's a really good way of using the tool. At least then, again, with the whole point around like decision fatigue, you're just going, I have eggs,
yes,
like an onion and a pasta, I don't know, whatever. And it can go, great, okay, you can sort of almost do a carbonara or whatever it ends up being. I think that's personally been a bit of a game changer. The other plus points on doing that as well are the shopping list is created, so we're not buying food that we then waste.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we are a bit healthier because of it as well.
When I was in London, we did the meal box. No, we did the odd box thing where it's like the lumpy shaped
Oh yeah.
carrots come to you
Yeah.
and things like that. And I had to stop it because I just couldn't really focus and work out what to make each week. But now I'm back here. Now I'm up in the north again. I've started the vegetable delivery service again, because now I can think, okay, I've got a bunch of celery, got this kale, never used kale before. How can I put this in other stuff that I work with? And that's really useful, because it means that I have more vegetables, I have more fruit, and I just have to deal with it and make interesting stuff with it.
Yeah. If in doubt, and you've got a bunch of vegetables left over in the fridge, roast them in the oven, blend them with some vegetable stock, et voila, you have soup.
Yeah, I've done a lot of roasting. 40 minutes, bit of olive oil, bit of salt, pepper, whatever you want on there. Herbs, perfect.
Yeah.
Cathy, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to see you again, and thank you for your aha moment. Where can people find you if they want to be in contact or get in contact with you, or hire you, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm very happy to take connections on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find me. So
sure.
LinkedIn, Cathy White 10, Cathy with a C. Happy to connect on there. And then if there's any interest in the company, you can go check out our website, which is seats.com. But you'll find everything on my LinkedIn.
Perfect. And I'll link to your LinkedIn profile and to wcoms.com in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kobi.
Thank you so much.